Hello, everyone. I'm Ken Filler from FLTeams.com, and we have a huge football game in Tampa this weekend between the USF Bulls and the FAU Owls. And Robbie Lastella from the Owls Nest has been kind enough to give us a few minutes here today. Robbie, how are you today?
Oh, I'm doing good, Ken. Thanks for having me on. Isaac, the whole FL Teams crew, you guys do a great job over there. So I'm happy to hop on here and provide some insight for you.
Thank you. We're happy to have you. It's kind of, as I looked at FAU's team, it's been kind of a tale of two seasons so far, even though we're only halfway through. You got beat up pretty good by Maryland. You lost to FIU, and then you've won your last two. What is your take on the way that this FAU team has played so far the first half of the season?
Yeah, they definitely got punched in the mouth early, right? I mean, I think everyone kind of expected a loss to Maryland. And in the beginning of that game, they look, at the first quarter, everyone was like, all right, keep it in it. And in the second quarter, I think they lost it like 28-0 or something. They never recovered. They got blown out from there. So the theme early on in the year in their losses was bad quarters against Maryland, against FIU, and against Memphis. They each had a quarter where they got outscored by, I think, 3 touchdowns or more. So they've eliminated that. They've gotten rid of what me and Ken LaVicka have called the death quarter. They've gotten rid of that here once they've gotten deeper into conference play. The loss to FIU was the surprising one. They got gashed in the run game, and they turned the ball over a lot. And they've really worked on those things. They played an option team in Rice, and they were able to form a game plan to stymie their run game for the most part. And then against UAB, UAB was very bad, to say the least, and had to win that game, and they did. So they've made necessary adjustments. They've gotten the pass rush going, and they've cut the turnovers down as well, which I think between the run stopping, the pass rush, and a passing game offensively where they're not turning the ball over multiple times, they've been able to string some wins together here.
Well, USF has kind of been in the same position some games as FAU, although they do have the 5-1 record. They've been able to win, but coach has really lamented the slow starts. They got out of the box slow against Boise State, got out of the box kind of slow against Charlotte, and of course we know about the North Texas game. Byron Brown had 3 turnovers in the first quarter. So that is something I know that they've been working on. Start fast. USF is a great second half team. They're one of the top teams in the country coming out at halftime and putting points on the board in the third quarter. But coach really wants them to work on coming out of the box quickly, getting out of the gate quickly, and making sure that you're taking advantage of everything you can get right from the get-go. You've got a pretty good quarterback over there, Colton Voltkamp. Hope I'm pronouncing his name right.
No, Ken, come on. No. It's Caden Beltcamp, Ken. Come on.
Caden Beltcamp. I apologize.
After you, Ken. They're going to get it. No, I'm kidding.
Yeah, I apologize.
No, I'm just joking with you. It's Caden.
All good, man.
And yes.
Tell me a little bit about him.
Yes, Caden transferred over from Western Kentucky this past offseason. And he won CUSA, I believe it was Player of the Year last year, after, a really solid campaign with the Hilltoppers. He was, Zach Kitley was actually the offensive coordinator at Western Kentucky 2 years ago. And although Caden wasn't there during his time, or 3 years ago, although Caden wasn't there during his time, he did recruit him. And there was a relationship there. And when Kitley came to FAU, he needed a quarterback, and Caden was in the transfer portal. And he had interest from bigger schools, but there was some money to be had and also a fit with Kitley here as well. And he opted to come here, and along with his best friend, Easton Messer, in the slot. He's a slot receiver, Julian Edelman type, guy, just to comp there. Hasn't had the touchdowns yet this year, only one, but he's been a go-to guy. Had 15 receptions one game, I think it was 11 another. So he's been a go-to guy. And Caden, he struggled there in a couple games, had multiple turnovers. He hasn't had a multiple turnover game since I believe the FIU game. And so, he's been able to cut those down. Obviously, he had one last game. He's still having a couple games where he has an overthrow, and those haven't gone his way. Sometimes they get dropped, but for him, those have been interceptions so far. got to work on that. But he's definitely shown he's capable of running this high tempo offense. And it's only gotten better as the season has gone on. He's gotten other guys involved outside of his best friend. I think that was the biggest concern with FAU in the offseason. You bring in a guy with his best friend. Is he going to force the ball to him every time? And that hasn't been the case. We've seen some other guys getting going here. Assad Wasim, Jay-Sean Platt as well. So the offense has grown, and Veltkamp has gotten better along with it.
Well, we have our own, I call him a Heisman candidate. He's not getting a lot of love nationally, but Byron Brown, who is just at times taking this team on his back and willed them to win. He has 13 touchdowns in his last 3 games. He's passed for 1,439 yards. He's got 13 touchdowns on the season, passing, 5 rushing. And he is the guy that drives the engine on offense for this USF team. The other thing about USF is they have a lot of depth. Sam Franklin, Alvon Isaac, and Ike Davenport, all 3 have close to 200 yards. A couple of them have over 200 yards in the ground game. So it's not just one guy that they're relying on. They're using a bevy of folks to run the ball, and they're averaging as a team 5 yards per carry on the ground. And when you look at the receivers, same thing. Keyshawn Singleton, great receiver, Chaz Nimrod, and one young kid that's really come on the last 2 games is Jeremiah Koger. He has 8 catches, 169 yards, and 3 touchdown passes. So those receivers are definitely, I think, going to play a big part in the matchup on Saturday night. Going over to the defensive side of the ball, it looks like that's where FAU has kind of struggled this season. Talk a little bit about the defense and maybe some of the strides they've taken since that early opening loss at Maryland.
Yeah, I think early on in the year there was definitely some struggles. There was things going on like missed assignments on the defensive line, blown coverages, just little mistakes here and there that were happening so much that multiple times that it really hurt the team. And also penalties. Early on in the year they had, I think, 2 or 3 games, or I think it was just 2, where they had 10 plus penalties, and both of them obviously losses. So they've cut the penalties down. There's still been some busted coverages, still a couple missed assignments here and there, but they've really cut that down as well, the mistakes. And they've started rushing the passer for years now at FAU. It's been kind of an issue rushing the passer. And over the past couple of weeks, they've really done a good job doing different things, whether it's bringing linebackers, whether it's bringing cornerback blitzes, and really rotating the defensive line in there, getting different looks at and pressuring the quarterback. And I think that's really helped improve the defense. We saw last week Jalen Kitna struggle at times, especially early on in that game. FAU was bringing the pressure and then getting home. And in the run stuffing game, first game against Maryland, they did a good job. Obviously, they did a good job against FAMU. And then they get gashed back-to-back games, 6 total quarters, really. First half against FIU, they did a good job. But for that second half, Keyshawn Owens destroyed them. And then Memphis, Brendan Lewis, and Desrosiers, their running back, destroyed them as well. They then proceed to stop the option, and they did a solid job last week as well. So between stopping the run, generating pressure, I think this defense has grown in the past couple of weeks, just like the offense. But in this game, I really am interested to see how they do rushing the passer, because USF's offensive line has been good outside of that Miami game. And asking anyone to block Miami and Ruben Bain is a tough task. So there's really no diss there. And then if they can't rush the passer, how are they going to stymie this offense of USF that puts up a ton of points? They're going to have to stop the run game itself. You guys, I noticed, have averaged, I think, 5 yards a carry plus for everybody on the roster. If they can cut that down a little bit, that will help if they can't rush the passer, because they also rotate a ton on the defensive line, and USF, their up-tempo offense isn't going to allow for that. So some things to watch in this game is how FAU's pass rush does against an up-tempo offense with a solid offensive line, and if they're able to kind of cut down that run game for USF, which has helped Byron Brown, in my opinion, be strong this season.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but I was looking over the FAU stats. Did I see that they have not created a turnover yet this year defensively?
Fumble rule. They have created fumble recoveries. I believe 2 or 3
Okay.
fumble recoveries, but no interceptions yet this season. That has definitely been a talking point, right? They've had a couple where they should have had them in the arms, whatever, but doesn't count the stat sheet almost. So, yeah, they haven't had an interception yet this year. And, you know, they've improved things week by week, but that interception hasn't gotten there yet. You know, we've seen Keywan Jenkins for FIU struggle at times. They didn't intercept him. We saw Jalen Kitna struggle at times a lot this year. You know, I thought that was going to be the game. Keywan Jenkins had a great game against FAU, and he was running the ball more. Jalen Kitna, UAB, they struggled at times. They had to pass a ton, and they still didn't throw an interception. So I think they're you know, I don't know. I can't say that they're pressing for an interception. You know, it's tough to do that. But they definitely want one. And, you know, Byron Brown has been better this year compared to, you know, his last full season. That was 2 years ago now, but he was struggled then, you know, as a full-time guy with interceptions. Doesn't seem like that's the case this year at all.
In assessing Byron Brown, he's very spurty. Like he threw a couple in that first quarter against North Texas, didn't have any the rest of the game. He needs to stay hot, cut down on the turnovers, fumbles included. And Alex Galesh talked about his turnovers after the game against North Texas. And his coaching philosophy is he's not going to coach them not to fumble because that is part of the game. But they have to do a better job of, you know, trying to hang on to the football offensively. When it comes to USF's defense, it's a lot like the offense. They have a lot of playmakers. They have a lot more depth this year than they've had in the past. And they're using a lot of those guys are contributing. Jalen Schuler and Mac Harris, the 2 linebackers, 1 and 2 on the team in tackles. Jalen Schuler, Defensive Player of the Week in the conference. But they've kind of led the charge defensively. And then last week, against North Texas, you had Tavin Ward, who came out of nowhere to have 14 tackles. So they're getting good contributions from everybody up and down the defensive lineup. Also, the contributions, 7 players have had interceptions. We've had 11 sacks as a team, 7 fumble recoveries, and the Bulls lead the nation in 16 turnovers so far this season. So the defense is much improved from what we have seen in the past, and that's really helped them get off to this 5-1 start.
Todd Orlando's name FAU fans will be familiar with.
Yes. Offensively, it's going to be, I think, a shootout. I know the line is 21. USF is favored. Me personally, I think that's a little too high. This is a rivalry game. These two teams, not a lot of love for one another. They don't like one another. 21 points is a bit much, but I could see at some point it turning into a shootout where USF goes down the field and scores in 3 plays, and then maybe FAU will come back with another 3 or 4 plays and score. What's your take on the offensive shootout we may see?
I agree. You know, 21.5 is a lot of points. And, you know, if FAU reverts back to their struggles they had against FIU or even Maryland and Memphis, that could very well happen. They put themselves in a hole, and then the offense never woke back up in those games. But since the Memphis game, that they've really been able to bounce back in their past 2 conference games. And albeit Rice and UAB, 2 teams who probably will finish towards the bottom of the American, but nevertheless, they're conference games, and they found a way to win those in fairly solid fashion. And so, you know, I what I'm interested to see is if USF does find themselves up, you know, a touchdown, 10 points, 15 points in this game. I watched most of the North Texas game, and that was the most game outside of the Miami USF game that I watched for USF this year. And it's just seemed like in that one, and I've noticed this is the case, they don't really shift from their up-tempo offense. They remain in that up-tempo offense, and it doesn't allow for a lot of clock to come off. And if they're scoring, if they're moving the ball, it doesn't really matter. But if FAU's defense can string together stops in that situation is when that 21 points to me seems like a little impossible, because FAU's defense has had times, where a linebacker misses his gap and then a running back finds a 70-yard touchdown because he missed his gap, or a cornerback decides to be too aggressive and he bites and it's a wide open touchdown. But at other times they bounce back from that. It's not like they give that up and then they die. Like, they come back and they bounce back. So to me, although, I don't know necessarily if FAU can walk in there in a Ray J and probably what's going to be a good environment and pull off an upset. That's a lot for a team with a defense that's still building and an offense which has made some mistakes at times and is potentially missing a starting running back. So that's a lot. But can I see them making this a game and scoring, a lot of points to match USF? Quite possibly. So I'm interested to see if USF does find themselves up, can FAU's defense get some stops? And if they do, 21 is a lot of points.
Yeah, I agree. That's a bit much. So give me, from your perspective, 3 keys to maybe FAU getting a win and walking out of there with a win on Saturday night. What do they have to do?
Yeah, so on the defensive side of the ball, it's going to start with stopping the run. As I mentioned, rushing the passer in this game is going to be hard. And I think the easier route, in my opinion, to slowing down USF's offense is finding a way to stop their run. Their entire running back room as averaging 5 yards a carry. If you eliminate that portion of their offense, obviously you're not going to stuff them for negative yards, but if you limit them to 2.5, 3 yards a carry every time instead of 5, that'll make longer passing situations. And although USF's offense is explosive, longer passing situations are always more difficult. So that's number one, stop the run or rush the passer. But I think stuff in the run is going to be a little bit easier. On the offensive side of the ball for FAU, Caden Veltkamp cannot turn the ball over, cannot give USF's offense even more chances. They're a high tempo. They're going to score a lot of points. And if you give them extra chances, that'll only make things more difficult to come back. Caden Veltkamp's done a good job here over the past couple of weeks managing turnovers. And I think if he can do that in this game, that will give them a better chance. And then another thing on the offensive side of the ball, they've got to find a way to run the rock. It's been an issue even last week against UAB, although Caden Shields-Dutton stepped in and did an admirable job for Xavier Terrell. They're going to need more consistency on the ground. It's been tough for them to get over 4 yards of carry. It's been tough for them to kind of get upper, 150s, 200 team rushing yards. And although it's not a rush-based offense, we've seen Zach Kitley offenses in the past have success in their passing side by complementing that with a successful run. Look at Taj Brooks last year at Texas Tech. So for this offense to really do what it's fully capable of for FAU and what Zach Kitley wants, they need to run the ball as well. And so offensively, no turnovers, run the rock. Defensively, either rush the passer and frustrate Byron Brown and in turn force turnovers, or stop the run, force Byron Brown into longer passing situations, and also potentially create a turnover. That's going to be my 3A, 3B is force a turnover, but you can attach that to the defensive side of the thing. So if they're able to force Byron Brown into some tough situations, get some turnovers, and then the offense is able to run the rock and then not turn it over, it could be a ball game. But there's a lot of ifs that go into that. There's some health in FAU's running back room. Xavier Terrell was out last week, and Jamari Sands was dealing with an injury the week prior. So those are their top 2 backs right there, and they only got 6 total backs on scholarship in the room. So it gets pretty slim after that. And if they can't run the ball, that'll make things difficult. And USF's defense has been aggressive. So if Caden Veltkamp's in long down situations, that's not ideal. So got to run the rock, put him in safer passing situations, and we'll see what happens.
I think for USF, I think the key is a fast start. I mean, they've never played a team this season that has the kind of weapons and the style of offense that FAU has. So I think it is imperative that they start fast. The other thing they cannot do is coast. When they get a lead, don't take your foot off the accelerator. Keep the pedal to the metal. They've done that. One game against Charlotte, they had a 25-point lead in the second half, and it got whittled down to like 13 points just because, they figured they had the game won and were kind of just going through the motions. So they can't let that happen. They have to play a full, solid 60 minutes the way that they know how to play. The other thing I think is key is the defense got to get pressure on Voltkamp, the quarterback. I don't know that he's seen a defense quite like USF is going to bring, but they have to be able to pressure him. If they don't pressure him, there's the potential that he can pick them apart. And USF's secondary has been vulnerable at times this season. Now, they haven't had long stretches where they've played poorly, but at times it is reared its head, and you had to ask yourself, hey, what's going on back there? So they have to be able to get pressure on him. And then quarterback play, Byron Brown, the generator of the offense, don't force it. I felt like against the North Texas game, he was forcing a lot of things, forcing a pass, forcing a throw, and it got picked. You have to take what the defense is going to give you. This is a big game. You still have all your postseason goals ahead of you. You want to win the conference championship, maybe get a spot on the college football playoffs. This is not a game where you can, be lackadaisical. FAU's a solid team, and if you don't prepare properly and have the right mindset, they will beat you. And one other key, not necessarily a key to this game, but it's a mindset key, don't look ahead to Memphis. Forget about Memphis till Sunday. USF plays at Memphis next week, but you can't be thinking about that. The only thing you have to focus on and take care of is the game in front of you. And I think if USF is able to, focus on those four things that, I just talked about, I think they'll come away victorious.
It's quite possible. I agree with a lot of that. USF's a very talented team, and if they can indeed rush the passer, that'll definitely make things difficult for FAU. The offensive line has been improved lately, but there is talent on that defensive line. We saw them struggle a little bit at Maryland against a big defensive line, so we'll see what happens. Anything can happen. I didn't think Daniel Richardson would go in there and throw, go crazy a couple years ago, but this is a much better USF team than what we saw 2 years ago. So FAU's going to have to play a good ball game. We'll see what happens.
Give me your final prediction before we wrap it up here, Robbie.
Final prediction. Oh, I usually don't do those. But I will say, it's going to be, I do think it will be a close game. As long as FAU doesn't go turn the ball over like we saw, or have that death quarter, as I mentioned earlier in the podcast. If those two things don't happen, I think it'll be a close game. If those two things do happen, whatever I say next, out the window. But because if they're able to do those two things, I think the offenses will just compete against each other, and it'll be a kind of a battle of who can score more points in a shorter amount of time. And so in the end, I think USF's defense right now has the advantage over FAU's, and I think they'll be able potentially to make a play that could be a difference maker. So right now I'll say USF 42, FAU 35. But we'll see what happens. Anything can happen. But 42-35, I'll say USF wins this one because of their defense has improved steadily since the last time FAU was at Ray J 2 years ago, and even last year they've improved. So the defensive improvement for USF will make the difference in this shootout, in my opinion.
I have a USF winning as well. I have a close game, a little closer than I think maybe what your score indicated. I think it will be a high-scoring affair. I saw the over-under at 73.5 points. I don't know that they'll break 73 combined. They could, but I have USF winning 41-31 when the dust has settled. I think this, and I think this will be a good test for USF. They haven't really, outside of the Miami game where they just got ran off the field. They and the Florida game, Florida was competitive, but they haven't played, a conference game that's really going to challenge them. And the defense, offense going to be up in their face, and they're going to have to go out and make some plays and maybe will themselves to win. So I think it's going to be a really good test for USF. But I see them winning when the dust settles.
See what happens.
We will see what happens. Robbie Lastella from the Owl's Nest, our special guest here on FLTeams.com. Robbie, thank you again for your time. We appreciate you, and we'll talk to you down the road.
Of course, I appreciate you guys for having me, and I'll be over there in Tampa this weekend, so I'll see you guys there.
Sounds good.